more freestyle presentation than an actually planned presentation. Hope we can start what e-NABLE is always doing, like the hands and the arms for the kids. And I have a little background in mechanical engineering because I'm a Bachelor of Engineering, machine development, and plus I worked like 7 years in designing components with AutoCAD and Inventor. So with all the STL files, I have a little problem because my Inventor don't like them at all. So I have to use different parts to fill them up so get them solid. And what's my biggest concern is I see that from an engineering point of view, and that's also a little conversation that I had in a lunch break. It would be cool to have the engineering point of view more integrated in e-NABLE. So, for example, I did some modifications with the arm, and it is done by a program that we have in e-NABLE, but I cannot get the parts in it, so I take the long way around. I just use the program that we have to scale them up, and then I will use my modifications from the Inventor and I will sketch them over that so that I can just use the whole modification. So that being said, if you take it from an engineering point of view, it would be cool if there's one major database where you have all the folders where you can say, okay, this is the version A, this is the version B, this is version C, and the actual version is just in the main stage so that you can go on from there. But the other point is, because I come from big companies, it is not good if everyone can access this and change them. It would be good if there's one person or two person responsible to adding them and putting them in there, and the other one can just copy them and download them. Because if you have a German saying, I don't know if it's the same like in English, if you have several cooks, then they will just ruin the life. Yeah, it's like this, you know, it's like, also my company is a big Japanese company that I work with. We have lots of guys that can use the tools, but there are only 2 guys allowed to change them and put them in the archives. Because if a lot of guys doing this, they mess up. And if you don't track record what you're doing, then you're totally confused. So with that being said, the first thing I did was I took a look at the Phoenix hand. The Phoenix hand is nice, and it's actually the product that all of the kids in Germany like. Some like the rough Raptor hand, but this one that they like. And then I saw the videos and saw that most of the guys do it by hand. So they thermoform it and then they thermoform it by hand. And for me, it is like this. If you do two gauntlets, they look totally different, and that is what bothers me. If I want to create something, it should always look the same. So I started thinking about that, how much do you need to really accomplish a similar design, and just do it one time and then you print it another time. So I came up with forming tools. For example, forming the gauntlet, I just need 2 tools. And for forming the mesh plate, I have another tool to just push it in there. And to make it accurate, I have a plastic bag. I label it with a precision size, and then I can just put it away, and next time I have another kit, the same size, it works fine. And the fun is, back in the days, I found out that a guy like Da Vinci was right. Because, yeah, you can post it along. The first time I used these forming tools, I used them on a 9-year-old girl. I measured their size, and then I created the forming tools. And then I was in the challenge to create a demonstration hand for the exhibitions with a handlebar. And I measured my hand and I figured out, okay, it's not 110% like from the little girl, it's 190%. So I thought, okay, you're an engineer, you're a little bit lazy, so just scale it up from 110 to 190. And it fits perfect. And that's what I find out. The difference when you design these forming tools is really not that much. If you have this size and the width, it's roughly the same from the people. There are just 3 or 4 people that I get to know that have a bigger underarm that didn't fit the scheme, but usually it fits all perfectly.
one size fits all, or?
No, it's
several
just you
sizes?
can scale it up. If you have, like I said, you have the girl that has 110% hand, and mine is 190. I just scaled her forming tools up to 190, used them, and it fits perfect. And I just had, like, in the exhibitions, I had 3 or 4 guys that had this bigger underarms. They didn't fit the profile, but usually all of them fit the profile. That was quite nice to find that out. So I have these files as well. So right now with the Netherlands, I start some like in Dropbox, and then I give them the access rights, and there I already created it like this. I'm the master, I can add them in, and if they have files, I will add them in, and they can just read and download them. So they will not get confused. Usually I tell my co-workers that do CAD work on a professional level, don't just put files in there, also add a text file where you say what you've done, so that no one gets confused, so you have a track record, because you have the files with it later, it confuses the people all the time. Yeah, and then comes materialization. For my bachelor thesis, I analyzed the Phoenix hand. I take it from scratch because my professor said this is a good topic, but just figure out something that you want to test it. And so I figured out, okay, I have to test the nylon strings, I have to test the knots. When the knots, the next step is, the next logical step is the knots are connected with the fingers, so I have to test the PLA as well. And then for me, a critical part was this part here, because there you have a connection of having PLA connected with screws. So I built this up. So basically I did 10 tests on this hand. Each test was done 5 times, so I have a average, and I could do it just like in an Excel scale. And first thing I did, tested 5 times the strings on room temperature. Then I let them age 5 times. I put them for, I think, 1 hour at 60 degrees in an oven. And then I tested them afterwards, so like aging process. If you have usual plastic aging processes, most of the time you put them in an aging cabin that just applies heat over a longer period of time. So I did this, and this had a little effect, because nylon strings, when you research them, they have a certain, let's say, love for water. The longer you water them, the worse the strength get. So the last test was done, let's say it was 60 degrees active. So for every test, I measured the room temperature, I measured the humidity, I record this, and for the active test, I have 3 different kind of temperature measurement systems, so that I can apply with a hot air blower the temperature on the string, and I have 3 thermometers to measure the temperature. And the strange thing is, you can get nearly every material, you can get nearly every e-model, but for nylon strings it's nearly impossible. It's like they keep it a secret, like the tire people will never tell you what's in them, because you can get the nylon strings really stronger if you add additional materials or additional plastics or additional chemicals, then they get stronger, they have different versions of what they can last, and you can just get the basic PA66, and that's really strange. But what was interesting, I did tests that were, let's say, picture-based. So I had a testing facility, and I did not test it with machines like DNORM, but I tested like, you do want to make it reliable, because the people that these tests will have a look at are families. And my special task was make a stretch between doing a technical research that really is a good basis for a bachelor thesis, and make it reliable for people. And later on I will tell you why this was the best idea that I ever had. So my test was basically, I had a camera set up, and I had, for example, the nylon string. I made 2 lines on it, and without applying force, I take the first picture. And then I applied 500 grams of weight, take another picture. Another 500 grams, take another picture. And all this added up till the nylon ripped apart, and this was the whole test. And then I could say, okay, with this kind of pressure or this kind of force, I have this kind of length, so I could make a stress-strain diagram from that. And the funny part was, with nylon, I don't have so much data, because they don't tell you exactly how much a Newton per square millimeter is. But with PLA, there was the data from, what's that called, MakerBot. They put it on, there was 65.7 Newton per square millimeter. And my result over the 5 tests with my pulling string was not 65, it was 66.02. And my professor said, you know, this is not a Dean test that you're doing, but you're nearly as accurate as a Dean test, so you can go on with that. So now, why did I do a test like this? After that, a few months after that, in Europe came the Dieselgate. And all the people were angry about that, because they said they're so big companies. They do tests that we don't understand, that we can read about, but they do tests in secret laboratories that we don't know, and they say, you know, you have to trust us. And then it's all bullshit. Sorry my words. But I did a test that they can really rely on. I said, you know, I have this string, I have a basket, and then I put in really salt, because later on the basket will drop on the floor, and then if you have something that you can just shovel back in, it's better than to have water or stuff. But for them it's like, I understand your test and it's reliable, and I can say, you know, the Dean test this is the result from the Dean test, and I'm just 0.3 Newton per square millimeter beside that. So that helps a lot. That being said, comes the development part of all this. Because every printed object, that's also one of the reasons that I found interesting in the presentations before, especially if you print something, they don't have the same e-NABLE in every direction. Because you always get 2 e-NABLEs, the TD version and the MD version. One is higher, one is lower. What's the reason? Because if you have the print direction like this and you pull the strings like this, it has more strength and will retain more strength than if you have the layers like this and you pull the layers out like this. That was the reason when I did the bird. Sorry, I have no presentation. But the bird, let's say like this, the bird keepers came up with the idea, you know, this bird is missing 8 centimeters of leg, and they wanted to have an additional feet, but I could not make a feet like this, fixed totally on the leg, because it should move, otherwise it would walk funny. But the bird has one extra, and that was funny because he can step on his prey with 5 times his weight. So I come with the idea, actually the whole thing is long like this. I come with the idea of making a movable feet, and the problem was when he steps on his prey with 25 kilograms, the bird weight like 4 to 5 kilograms, so he steps on a prey like 25 kilograms. I cannot print this part in one piece because they wanted to have a look like roughly like the feet of the bird. I could not print it upright like this, because then the layers would be like this, and this here, this part is the movable part. So as soon as it moves and he tries to step, it will break. So I had to print the middle part, the center part, laying down so that the lines will not be cracked. So this will withstand all the stepping, and the bird just stepped a lot in the beginning. But there was another issue about that, is I put a lot of screws in because he walks on field, and also in the wintertime, because an African bird, he works on concrete. So I put on the screw head, so the whole prosthesis was like 450 grams, with a 5 kilogram bird, is like roughly 10% of his body weight. So he really walked like, he just tried to do faster step because it was too heavy. So we come up with a sports model, we call that. Because the idea of the foot was just from the keepers. And then I said, okay, maybe the bird doesn't care about the foot. He just needs the 8 centimeters missing, like this piece was missing. And I came up with an idea for a sports model. No screws in it, lighter, like 180 grams. And he works fine with that. He still works fine with that. And there comes the issue. I didn't expect, for example, this is the lower leg of the bird, and then comes the upper leg. So it's really big bird. But this year is all bone. And I had to connect it because my printer couldn't print it that well. So I had this little piece here and I have the pin. And the first time it broke was here, and I was like, can't be, actually it's just one bone. So I reinforced it 3 times in different sections until I finally could make this version work. There's a full printed version because it's really stronger. And there's a little detail, everyone keeps asking me, what's this? I said, this is just for the bird to keep it upright. And so this one, here's the, actually the hinge or the, what's that, the elbow? I don't know what's that called at the bird. Let's say the elbow of the bird. So it cannot twist, and the elbow is in like here, it cannot twist, so it stays in position. That's just a little detail of engineering trick. When I did the storage, it was like a little bit tricky because the storage had just like this much of a lower leg, you missed much more, and this hinge is just for positioning it right, so it will not turn. With this, you can do always engineering tricks like the storage always walks on, what's that called, concrete. So with this will wear down, and if I print this in a whole piece, I have to reprint all this. So I'm a lazy engineer. I say, you know, I don't want to print that much, so I just said, this little piece here is removable. You just unscrew it and tell me you need another foot, and you get another foot. So it's always thinking out of the box. But the main focus I have is, I get a lot of requests, and that's what I think my closing of presentation is. I get a lot of requests right now from dog owners. But dogs are not as perfect as birds. I always keep telling them, sometimes the dog owners come to me and ask me, you know, can you do my dog? And I say, how heavy is your dog? And they go like 40 kilograms, and it's like, not so much. Because for an engineer point of view, when a dog just walks, you take twice his weight. When he starts running, you are 3.5 times his weight. And then comes the engineering, let's say the engineering feeling that you say, okay, I know from industrial mechanic and all the engineering, I know all the techniques that are available, but I am limited in what I can do with a 3D printer. I can force this prosthesis for the dog to be printed in plastic, but then it will be really big to just last. The other way, I told them, just go to a prosthesis manufacturer. I can do your design, and he gets access to steel, carbon, and all the stuff, and he can make it slim and nice and small. So I always tell my students and all the stuff that they should not force one technology. They should consider all the technologies. Because it's not good if you just say, oh, I have only the 3D printer, and I would think in the 3D printer world, just think out of the box. And it's not good, for example, for the animal, if you just force him to have a big thing like this, like just to make it last. Because we saw with the African secretary bird, is now living 2 years with this prosthesis. Okay, I print them every year, I print them a new one because it tears down all the time he's walking. They keep telling me, you know, what you did is funny because you could really see the bird is growing up and glowing, because before he got the prosthesis, it was like he didn't eat well, he was a little bit like depressed, sometimes they could not get him out of the cage. And with this, he starts eating well, he runs around, sometimes it's just they are scared because they have to slow him down, he runs faster, and they go like, and even he tries to hunt with this prosthesis. You know, he steps on the head of a snake and they have a stuffed snake that they pull around, and sometimes he just tries with the reel, and then with the other, and he don't care, or she don't care anymore. So that's a good thing. And I think the take-home message is just, when you do this, just consider everything around you. You don't have to engineer everything from scratch. Yeah. Just go the opposite way of doing like the Chinese is doing it. Like, if there's something that, an idea that someone else already invented, maybe you can implant it in your system and just think out of the box. That's it. Yeah?
I'm not trying to force 3D printing on you, but Have you tried nylon? I know it's with your prosthetics.
It's actually the point that Germany and especially Europe is now aware of all the plastics in the sea, and with this you can still, that's why I print everything in PLA, then you can still go on and say, you know, we are actually not the reason for the plastic in the sea, because this is just biodegradable in certain ways. That's also the reason why when I remodeled the fingertips, I used some like natural rubber, so that you can say, oh, that's all natural. Also, in Germany we use neoprene, and till the day I had to figure out the nice conversation with the Department of Medical Products in Germany. I didn't know what exactly neoprene consists of, and there's also natural substance. And the funny part is, to go in the medical department, there are two types of neoprene. This one is medical grade, the other one is not. The difference is just, it is, they use a gas to make it foam-like, and to be medical grade, they use nitrogen. So the bubbles will be filled up with nitrogen, and for the others, they just need compressed air. And the only concern that medical products have is, when you use natural air, there could be a slight chance that in these really tiny bubbles, there's a bacteria farm growing. But the effect on the human body is like that you get a red dot on your skin at max. That's just the point. We try to do it more like because right now Europe is really evolving, especially with the cars. They are so concerned about pollution and all the stuff. So when you use plastic that is really like real plastic, then they go like, plastic in the seas, and it's like, we are a bit more aware, so I try to do it all like say the organic way and so on, because most of the Germans don't know about PLA, and then when I tell them, you know, in some medications there's even PLA inside, then they go like, wow, and I was like, that's just the point. But I think for further trials, especially when I try to test some of the knee models from Christian Selber, I will just consider other materials as well, because I know how much the PLA will last, and then I will just consider it. But for the kids and all the other stuff, I try to be on the natural side, so it's more a better image for e-NABLE as well.